There's something many people don't realize. The way others treat you often reflects what you've quietly allowed. It's not that someone starts off disrespecting you from the beginning, but over time, your small actions have taught them how to behave. When you stay silent about things that make you uncomfortable, when you repeatedly overlook moments where you're dismissed, or when you're always the one compromising just to keep the peace, you unintentionally send a message: this is acceptable. At first, it may seem like small things, a careless comment, someone not respecting your time once or twice. But if you don't speak up, those behaviors repeat and gradually become the default way they treat you. Eventually, you find yourself feeling drained, frustrated, even disrespected, without fully understanding why. The truth is, this doesn't happen all at once. It's the result of many moments where you chose silence instead of standing up for yourself. And once you recognize this pattern, you also begin to understand something important. If you want to change how others treat you, you first have to change what you're willing to tolerate. One of the main reasons you get taken for granted is because you try to please everyone. You say yes, even when you want to say no. You adjust yourself to fit other people's expectations, and you're afraid that if you don't, you'll be disliked or left behind. But here's the problem. The more you try to please everyone, the more you lose your own sense of worth. When you're always available and accommodating, people get used to receiving without feeling the need to appreciate it. What once looked like kindness slowly becomes something they expect. And over time, you become the one who keeps giving, but rarely receives the same energy in return. Stopping people-pleasing doesn't mean becoming cold or selfish. It simply means you start listening to yourself more, respecting your own feelings, and understanding that not everyone deserves your effort. When you stop chasing approval, something shifts. You're no longer trying to be accepted at any cost. And ironically, that's when people begin to respect you, because you've finally chosen to respect yourself first. When you begin to set boundaries, your life starts to shift in noticeable ways. Boundaries aren't about being distant or cold. They're simply a way of showing others where your limits are and what they shouldn't cross. In the past, you may have stayed silent when your time was taken for granted, when you were inconvenienced, or when you were treated without respect. But when you start speaking up calmly and clearly, you're reinforcing your own value. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. You might worry about how others will react or fear that they'll take it the wrong way. But in reality, people who truly respect you will understand and adjust their behavior. Those who react negatively are often the ones who benefited from you not having boundaries in the first place. Boundaries don't need to be loud or aggressive. Sometimes it's just a simple no, a firm tone, or choosing not to engage in situations that drain you. By maintaining your boundaries, you're quietly teaching others how to treat you, with respect, consistency, and awareness of your worth. One of the most powerful shifts doesn't come from what you say, but from how you respond. In the past, you may have been easily pulled into emotions, anger, sadness, or the urge to explain yourself when misunderstood. But those strong reactions often signal to others that they can affect you, even influence or control your emotional state. As you begin to change, you stop reacting immediately. You slow down, observe more, and choose either silence or a calm, measured response. This calmness isn't weakness, it's a form of control. It makes you less predictable, harder to read, and no longer someone whose emotions can be easily used against them. What's interesting is that when you no longer react the way people expect, it disrupts their sense of control. They may feel unsettled at first and gradually start adjusting how they approach you. You don't need to argue to win, and you don't need to prove anything. By simply staying steady in how you respond, you create enough distance to protect yourself while reinforcing your self-worth. In the end, your power isn't in reacting louder, it's in choosing when, how, and whether to respond at all. You don't need to explain everything about yourself just to be understood or accepted. In the past, you may have felt the need to justify every decision, every feeling, out of fear of being misunderstood or judged. But the more you explain, the more you unintentionally place yourself in a position where you feel the need to prove your worth to others. The truth is, people who genuinely respect you don't need long explanations to understand you. And those who have already chosen not to understand won't change their perspective no matter how much you say. Constantly explaining yourself only conditions them to question you more, and eventually they begin to see it as something they're entitled to. When you start keeping your responses simple, clear, and to the point, you send a strong message. You trust your own decisions. That quiet confidence shifts how others see you, and often it's that certainty, not long explanations, that earns you real respect. Many people are so used to putting others first that when they finally start prioritizing themselves, they feel guilty. You may have once believed that taking care of yourself was selfish, that if you didn't sacrifice, you'd be judged or seen as less caring. But the truth is, when you constantly place yourself last, you slowly become depleted, both emotionally and physically. As you begin to change, you learn to listen to your own needs. You rest when you're tired, say no when something doesn't feel right, and stop forcing yourself to be okay just to keep others comfortable. This doesn't make you a worse person. In fact, it makes you more balanced, grounded, and emotionally stable. The key is understanding that you don't need permission to take care of yourself. When you start valuing your own well-being, you naturally become less tolerant of things that harm you. And once that shift happens, people begin to see that you're no longer someone who can be pushed aside or placed last without consequence. Not everyone in your life is meant to stay. Some people bring negative energy that slowly drains you, making you feel tired, doubtful of yourself, or emotionally weighed down without you even realizing it. In the past, you may have tried to hold onto these relationships out of familiarity, fear of loneliness, or the hope that they would eventually change. But the more you try, the more exhausted you become. As you begin to grow, you start paying closer attention to how you feel after interacting with someone. If a relationship consistently leaves you feeling heavy, dismissed, or disrespected, it's a clear sign that you need to create distance. And distance doesn't always mean cutting someone off completely. It can simply mean limiting contact, sharing less, or no longer investing as much energy into them. Choosing to step away from people who don't align with you isn't a loss, it's a form of self-respect. When you create the right distance, you protect your peace, your energy, and your emotional clarity. Real confidence doesn't come from compliments or external validation. It comes from how you see yourself. In the past, you may have felt more valuable when you were noticed, praised, or chosen. But when those things were absent, it was easy to feel empty or start doubting your worth. As you begin to change, you stop relying on outside approval to feel enough. You become more aware of your strengths and your flaws, and you accept both without constantly comparing yourself to others. This kind of confidence isn't loud or attention-seeking. It's quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. It shows in the way you speak, the way you make decisions, and how you're no longer easily swayed by other people's opinions. What's interesting is that when you stop chasing validation, you often become more attractive, not because you're trying to be, but because you're simply being yourself. That authenticity creates a natural presence, one that doesn't demand attention, yet effortlessly draws people in. A major step in personal growth is accepting that you can't please everyone, and that's completely okay. In the past, you may have tried to adjust yourself to be liked, avoid conflict, or maintain a pleasant image in the eyes of others. But the more you do that, the more you lose your authenticity and feel exhausted from constantly playing a role. As you begin to change, you realize that not being liked by everyone isn't a flaw that needs fixing. People have different perspectives, standards, and preferences, and you don't need to fit them all. Instead of chasing acceptance, you choose to live in alignment with your own values. What's interesting is that when you stop trying to be liked, you become more genuine and free. The right people will naturally stay, while those who don't align with you will drift away. And that's not a loss, it's clarity. When you truly change from within, you begin to notice something very clear. The way others treat you starts to change as well, not because you demand respect, but because you no longer tolerate disrespect the way you once did. This shift doesn't have to be loud or confrontational, but it's strong enough for others to feel you're no longer overly accommodating, no longer reacting the same way, and no longer trying to please everyone. And because of that, people are naturally forced to adjust how they approach you. Those who genuinely respect you will adapt. they'll begin to treat you with more awareness and consideration. Meanwhile, those who were only comfortable with the old version of you may feel uneasy or even choose to walk away. But that's the point. You're no longer trying to maintain relationships that only exist at the cost of your self-worth. As you change, you don't just shift how others see you. You also redefine what you allow into your life. You become more selective, more intentional, and more grounded in your values. And that's when something powerful happens. You stop reacting to life and start leading it on your own terms.